Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of Think Business Live. Looking forward to talking to Eric Dunavant of Paradiem. Eric, it's great to have you here today. I want to kick off and really share a little bit about your story because I think it has some cool points that I want to bring up. Your family expected basically tragedy where, when it came to business and wealth, and I want to dive into that. I want to dive in how you came back from that. And I want to dive into mindset and things of that nature. But I want to really start off with one of the things that I really loved about your website and just the way that you market yourself is you talk a lot about intention.
Yeah.
And so I want to kind of dive into that right now because as a company, right, you are you talk about intentional transformation and, living a better story. And I love this quote, what if living a better story allowed you to pay less taxes and be more generous without changing your lifestyle? But what I love about it is the intentional transformation and living a better story. And I think right now, as we sit here on March 9th, I think a lot of people are thinking about the intention and living a better story and post-COVID and things of that nature. So just kind of take me back to the journey of, you being in alignment and now packaging and selling intention.
Yeah, well, what it comes down to is really this idea that I came into inside of the industry that working in the financial services type industry, right, is this whole idea that everything centers on a product or a strategy or an idea. And at the end of the day, when people come in and sit down with a professional, the idea is what's your return on investment? How did we perform? How did we do? But I had a number of circumstances that I kept running into that things looked really good for maybe 3 or 5 years, but you would end up with unexpected, unintended consequences that would fall out the back end. And so what that became then this idea of what if we turned this on its head and found a different way to look at it? And instead of measuring return on investment, we started measuring what we call return on intention. And we have a unique process to go through that. And what we found was when we turned it on its head, not only did we get better return on intention, we actually got better return on investment.
Mm-hmm. And so how does the process of, I just want to rewind that a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Because how do you get to that, right? How do you get to that mindset? How do you get to that, I'll call it kind of a spiritual awakening? I mean, how do you get there? The word intention gets thrown around a lot, but the way you're talking about it, and to me, the way it defines a company is your backstory. So I want to know your backstory and your road to intention.
Yeah, so it starts out, I'm raised in West Texas, small town. My dad's a veterinarian. My mom's a stay-at-home mom. I've got the idyllic life. I walk to school every day. I mean, everything is going well till we hit the 8th grade. My mom falls and breaks her arm. And my dad's typical business guy, borrowing money to get the business, to expand the veterinary practice. He's going to do a whole large animal thing. And anyway, my mom's medical bills pile up, and my dad ends up, we bury my mom the day before I start my freshman year of high school.
Oh my God. I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah, but it becomes a defining moment. So through all of this, now my dad, like typical business owner, raising 2 young kids, single dad, and was so focused on the business, right, from an intention standpoint, from a family. And this is what I talk about, is intention really starts with family, on what do you really want to have the outcome be for the family. And this is where my dad was so focused on the business, he had missed the family portion. So we spend the next 3 to 4 years, he's got to wake up every morning and decide, am I going to be Mary Poppins or am I going to run the business? And this would happen to anyone in that same situation. Yeah. It put a strain on our relationship. His health really declined. And then he had medical bills and everything else chasing him down, so that by my senior year of high school, he files bankruptcy. So he lost the home that I grew up in 2 months before I graduated high school. And we can talk about more of kind of the journey, but that then shapes this entire idea of there has to be a different way, right? It becomes this lifelong path of learning, of saying, it can't keep happening this way. You've got to break the lineage. There's got to be part of a formula that breaks the lineage. Correct.
Right.
Absolutely. And so the rest of my life and so I'll kind of let you ask the question, but the rest of my life becomes a journey of going, the way that we do it is broken. Yeah. Something is broken about the system that we're in, and we've got to find a way to do it that we can change the story that sits on the other side of that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, I appreciate you sharing that story. I think, I think that story is what connects all of us. Right. And sometimes we, I think in many cases we teach our pain, and because of the journey of the pain, right? I see that as a coach in many respects to what I do, and so now you kind of take this intention, you think there's a better way, there's a better formula, and so then you get into the business you're in now. So take us there.
Yeah, so I went into the financial services business to try and help families avoid the same problem that our family experienced, right? That was the first thing, was let's be more intentional. The next big breakthrough that happened for me that really broke this open happened when I had a family come in that was third generation wealth. So grandfather had started an oil and gas business. Couple comes in and says, hey, we've got 2 young kids. We haven't done any planning. We're getting royalty checks from our grandfather. And we need to do some planning. This family had an incredible heart for generosity and really loved just had these dreams and big visions for their kids. And the kids at this time were 7 and younger, right? So not real mature. So we sat down with the best of the best attorneys, best CPAs, best insurance, everybody that we could find on the team. And when we got finished, I can tell you I was sick to my stomach, because it really felt, I was like, this is it. This is all you guys could come up with. It was some family trusts and things like that. And at that point, I didn't know what was wrong. What it turned out to be, and I'll fast forward for you a little bit and tell you what happened, was it was really, really good tax planning. It was really, really good estate planning. It was terrible family planning. Within an 8-year period, the family business went initial public offering and increased their wealth about 10 to 15 times. Well, they had gotten a bunch of the wealth down to the kids and out of their estate. Again, great tax planning, great estate planning. And one of the nieces ended up in a bad addiction situation because because they knew how much wealth that they had. We had another nephew that was completely unmotivated. Each one of those kids were worth hundreds of millions of dollars at 18, 19 years old. Mm-hmm. And what it came down to was, you kind of got this up here. Nobody was talking about what's the potential of what could happen to the family under great tax and estate strategy. And 2 months after we finished that plan, I met someone who had been working in this business for over 30 years, who became my mentor in this and helped me really sit down and go, okay, I understand what you're trying to do for the family, but let's be more about what you're trying to do financially, but let's be more intentional about what the unintended consequences are of what we're creating and make sure that this is really what you want.
Yeah. Yeah. I love your story because it has, authenticity, pain, and then joy. Right. And and I'm a big believer that we all need mentors. And so, enter the mentor to help guide and this and the other. I just have a question before we dive a little bit deeper. And I love the transformation that you're sharing. Do you think the universe has a plan, or do you think it's all just kind of your drive?
So here's what I think. Yes. I think that the universe has a plan. So full disclosure, I'm a Christ follower. I believe in God. I think the universe has a plan and then is inviting us to embrace it. So there could be a plan that we totally miss.
Mm-hmm. So how do we, let's talk about this. So how do we listen? How do we hear the whispers?
Yeah. Oh, wow. Good question. I think the first step of hearing the whispers is to slow down. And to stop. So I'll give you another part of the story. I was actually at a place a couple of years ago where I'm running this business, right? I'm in the middle of helping people experience transformation. I was on the road all the time and out of the office, and had little bits of turmoil happening at home. And I had a good friend of mine who pulled me aside and said, Eric, you talk about all this transformation and loving your family and making an impact. I just want to know why you hate your family. And I was like, what are you talking about? I don't hate my family. He goes, look, here's what I know. You're on the road. And it was February, and my wife had pointed out, I've been on the road 21 of 28 days.
Uh-huh.
A month. And so I wasn't home, and they're like, hey, you must hate your family if you're not home. He goes, I love you enough. Here's what I want you to do. You keep chasing after business. Why don't you come home and focus on yourself and stop and listen? This is where this kind of comes in. Take a step back. Stop being so focused on business, but focus on you, focus on your family, and see what happens inside of your business. So he encouraged me to create some space every single day where I was taking time to just pause for 10 to 15 minutes a day and just pray and listen. And in that entire season, so I stopped coming into the office before 9:30 because it was him encouraging me to really kind of carve out this time for me. Yeah. With that kind of intentional time. But so everything transformed for me personally. That was a complete transformation inside of my family and my business. It freed my employees up to be more opportunistic and do more things. But you asked, how do we get there? You've got to create and carve out that space to actually listen. Otherwise, we run victim of running so hard, we can't hear anybody else but ourselves. And we give ourselves the worst advice.
Correct. Yeah. I am, I'm a big meditator. I've been meditating for a long time. And to me, I don't know if I spelled whispers right, but whatever. Anyway, but I'm a big meditator, and I think that that quiet time is so critical. And I hope that COVID, where it forced all of us to slow down, especially those first few months, right? I hope people kind of, carry that with them, because meditation has been one of the greatest gifts for me. Because I've been doing it for so many decades now, that you learn to kind of how to put it into the moments of your day when you need it. But then you need to structure it. I think for many people, and I find this, I was just on a coaching call where someone was, I won't bore you with the details, but they had come from a corporate world, and now they're no longer in a corporate world, and they don't know how to structure themselves. And so you have to kind of structure, and sometimes we're wired to go 110 miles an hour, when really we should be rewiring to learn how to go 0 miles an hour and just be silent.
It sounds like you and I have a lot of the same habits, but I mean, from this standpoint, I mean, a 10 to 15 minute meditation is a reset of like hours.
Yeah. Reset of hours. I'm going to show you something. I just got this in the mail yesterday. I just bought it. I interviewed a guy who told me about it, but it's light therapy. It's like this thing called Mind Alive. And it's like, It's light therapy with music, and you put it on your ears, and you do it for like 10, 15 minutes. Cause I wanted another kind of, thing for myself, my wife, and my kids. So yeah, I think it's great. So I love that you kind of tapped into this mentor, this intention, and now you're teaching other people to slow down, be intentional, and plan. So let's talk about the importance of planning, right? Because I think a lot of people have, no clue about their finances, no clue what any of it means. They rely on other people, which is fine. They have mentors and things of that nature, and that's what people like you are for. But I don't think enough people actually plan. They live for the moment. I think COVID, people who haven't planned effectively or appropriately found that during COVID, they found themselves in situations where, had they done things differently the last couple of years, it may not have been the situation of, what was happening today. And so talk about the planning element of things. We all hear the story. If you invested $1 every day starting in 1940, you'd be worth, ... So, but talk about that. Talk about step 1, 2, and 3 of planning.
Well, so step 1, 2, and 3 really comes down to, first is know the environment that you're in. Because when you're going to work with somebody to plan, make sure you've got somebody that's your advocate and isn't an advocate for their bottom line.
Yeah.
That's the number one thing that I think is important. The second thing that I think gets to be important is, if you're not talking to someone who isn't asking you to envision what you want in 3, what you want in 5, what you want in 10, and then what you want for generations beyond you, then you're doing yourself a disservice. Now, what some people get carried away with is like, well, but what if I don't hit that target or I don't get anything? Well, my dad gave me a great book when I was stuck on what I was going to major in my sophomore year of college, and it was called "If You Don't Know Where You're Going, You Might End Up Somewhere Else."
Yeah.
And so if you don't know where you're going with your family and you don't know what your purpose is, then you might end up somewhere else. And one of the key things, especially for business owners, I find so many times it's like, well, I just want more profit and I want more profitability and I want to be able to take more distributions. It's like, well, why? What's the underlying purpose of the business? What's the underlying purpose for your life? What's the greater why behind what you're doing? And one of the things when we talk about being intentional and creating transformation that we're trying to encourage people to find is it's not just planning for dollars' sake, but it's planning for an ultimate purpose that's bigger than you. It's planning for, the phrase I like to make is, where are you going to make a dent in the universe? There's an opportunity for you to come alongside and do something greater that, are you going to be remembered or forgotten in a couple of generations? So if you're going to be remembered and you're going to make a dent in the universe, then we have to be intentional about it. But that you're not going to be remembered because you had $1 million in your IRA.
Yeah, right. Your ego will remember it, but you're not going to be remembered for that. Right. Yeah.
And so
I love what you're talking about.
It's about creating a planning process that is asking questions beyond the dollars. Right. Because what we found is you end up coming to the dollars fit into place once you understand the greater purpose.
Yeah, I understand. Right. Yeah. And I love what you're talking about. It's understanding, intention, purpose, awareness, and for 30 seconds, talk to the do-it-yourselfers, because I'm a big believer that this is an industry that you need mentors. But to the do-it-yourselfers, what's one reason why they shouldn't do it themselves?
I'm going to tell you the biggest thing is that, a lot of times what a do-it-yourselfer thinks is, well, I just need to know the answer. I just need to know the answer. And what we tell people is the secret's not in knowing the answer. The secret is in knowing the questions. Yeah. You've got the right partner. You've got the right coach alongside you. It's usually, and you know this, right? It's not the first question you ask. It's usually the third or fourth question that you ask. You don't have the skill to ask yourself your own questions. I mean, the interesting part that I'll just be transparent on, I'm a client of my own product. Part of what we work on is not just the financial, but we have family meetings. My team comes in and runs my own family meetings. I don't even do my own myself because I recognize the conflict of I can't see it myself. I'm stuck in my own forest.
Yeah, right. No, I hear you. I would say that one of the things that I love, and one of the things that I think is a unique ability of mine, is asking questions. That's why I love I love being a business coach. I love going into companies, because I can see and feel and sense what's going on, ask great questions that bring out the bedrock issues. And that's why I love podcasts, right? I love being a host and asking questions more than I love being a guest. Just because I don't love talking about myself, I love asking questions. So that really resonates with me. Last question before we move into a speed round. The mentor you talked about earlier, the best advice they ever gave you.
Oh, wow. Okay. The best advice they gave me was that people are hard, but love them anyway.
Good one.
Because at the end of the day, relationships are hard, people are hard, and it takes a process. And I learned this in my own experience. Everyone's been hurt by something. I think that's the number one thing to recognize, especially when people are bitter or angry or whatever, is so let's get to the root of what's sitting behind that. What's the pain that's sitting behind that? Yeah. And then through the pain, you find the breakthrough. I mean, when we talk about transformation, I've got a woman who works on our staff who's 100% on the relationship side, because your true transformation happens in relationship and happens inside of getting the breakthrough, and sometimes inside of that pain. Yeah.
I think all all transformation has some level of pain. I mean, that's part of the journey. It's Absolutely. Not a journey unless you had both sides of it. Yeah. All right. I love it. All right. Quick speed round. You ready, Eric?
I'm ready.
All right. Favorite book and why?
Infinite Game by Simon Sinek.
It's so good.
Isn't it?
So I had been listening to it. I put it on hold. My buddy Fish, who I do a sales podcast, the 7-Minute Sales Minute, he was telling me he just finished it, and I put it back on the top of my list. And I just listened to an interview with Simon interviewing the guy, James, I can't remember his last name, something, who was the guy who came up with Infinite Theory. It's on Simon's podcast. But yeah, it's a great book. All right, finish this sentence. One thing everybody can do right now to take control of their finances are?
Start with generosity. And that's going to sound backwards, but it was part of our overall journey, is actually to embrace your finances. Find out what happens if you started by giving. And I tell people, if you gave 5 to 10% of what you have coming in and started thinking about other causes, you'd never miss it.
Yeah.
And it would start you down a journey you've never experienced before.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Define yourself in one word.
My first word is intense.
Okay. All right. That's good. Go with the first word. All right. Yeah. Tell everybody, Eric, who your ideal client is and where they can connect with you.
Yeah. So our ideal client is someone who's about 3 to 5 years away from a business exit. And real quick, because when you get on the other side of that exit, it's one thing to have bootstrapped a business and have a couple $1 million in the bank and think you're worth something on paper versus to put money in paper. It changes relationships, it changes things. And so if we can help you talk about the relational side of the tsunami that's coming to the other side of that, that's our power. That's our superpower, is helping you look at what we call the intersection of family and finance. I can be found at paradiem.org. I am on LinkedIn. I am on, and it is .org. And then on Facebook as well.
I love it. I love it. Well, Eric, I really enjoyed having you on the show. I want to share a couple things that you shared. Think community, the importance of slowing down and focusing not only on 10, 15 minutes a day of silent time to kind of hear what the universe is bringing you, but also a hyper focus on family, not only yourself. Take that space every day, walk through intentions, walk with intention, break the lineage, understand what that formula is for you, the power of mentors to guide you and kind of really help along the way. And really just be intentional. So I think what you're talking about is so great. As a business coach, I love having this platform of a podcast because I work with successful people who are stuck and I help them get unstuck. And I always love interviewing people who provide guidance to help people get unstuck. And so everything we talked about, from intention to embracing your story and evolving from there, I think is so critical, Eric. And I can't thank you enough for being on the show. Think community, if Eric can help you, feel free to reach out to him, paradiem.org. You can also download my books for free, my book and my 100-page ebook at johndwoskin.com. Feel free to enjoy those. Eric, you had a thought?
Just one quick thing. So one of the things that we think is truly transformational sits inside of how you interact with your family. So if anyone's interested, all you have to do is send me an email, eric@paradiem.org. We have a free family impact kit that you can download. It's a day worth of activities to kind of bring the family together around more intention. So
I love it.
If it's of interest to you, just email me and we'll get a copy for you to download.
All right, good. Will you send me a blurb and I'll put it in the show notes for that?
Absolutely.
All right, great. Think community, if Eric can help you, thanks very much. Eric, it was a pleasure. Thanks so much for your time. Loved it.
Thank you. Right. Thank you, John. Have a great day.